Shalom, and welcome to Keeping the Shul Lights On, a podcast about the challenges of operating a synagogue, creating a Jewish community, and the hard work and efforts of a congregation's executive director and Jewish organizational leadership. Brought to you by Shul Marketing. Concerned your congregation and community are not responding to your Shul Marketing? Discover the strategies to connect with them, reach them where they are, and develop the results your leadership is seeking. Here is your host, Howard Walpoff.
Welcome back to Keeping the Shoe Lights On. I appreciate you being here for today's conversation. This is brought to you by Shul Marketing. And today we're going to be talking to an executive director who has had other roles within his synagogue. He's actually working at the synagogue that he grew up in, which also brings a lot of different historical value to the role, in addition to different types of experiences that people have. And we're just going to jump right into it. His name is Matt Walzer. His actual title is Managing Director of Beth El Synagogue in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. And Matt, welcome to our conversation today.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Howard.
Well, nice to meet you. And I'm very excited to learn about your experiences. I think there's a positive to having a lot of historical knowledge of a congregation. A lot of executive directors don't have that at all because they come right in at a certain point and had no relationship before the interview process. But you go way back with your shul. So why don't you share with us how you got started on the employment end of being a part of the staff at your shul?
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me. I started in my nonprofit career in 2012, so a little over 11 years ago. And I kind of came at a happenstance through some networking, through actually a rabbi at a different synagogue. And it brought me to working within the Jewish Federation system, which was predominantly within fundraising. So my first part of my career was really in corporate sales, and that transitioned over to fundraising and philanthropy and charitable giving. And my family and I had moved out to Seattle for a couple of years, which was a really great professional experience out with the Federation there. And we were ready to move back home and be closer to family again. And in doing so, as I was looking and considering what that meant professionally for me, there were a variety of people in my network that knew that Beth El was looking for, at the time, someone to be their charitable giving director. And as I came back home on a pit stop to attend a gala for a board I was on and head towards a fundraising seminar that I was going to be attending in Chicago, my wife strongly encouraged me to look at preschools and to set up some interviews to be prepared for our move home. And so in looking at preschools, I visited a few. One, we wanted to kind of have a similar feeling to the one we started with our oldest child when we were in Seattle. And then, and we knew of Olive Preschool, which is our preschool at Beth El Synagogue. And within the first tour, I called her and said, I have no idea what's happening professionally. This is our preschool that our child will go to, though. And so we immediately had that kind of reconnection of feeling like that was going to be the community that was going to be our home. And at the same time, I had people saying, they're really looking for a fundraiser. And I think that it would be a really good professional fit and a good fit for them and what they need with where they're at with their needs as they grow, with endowments and foundation work and things that they had started working on around 2014, 2015. And so after meeting with some lay leadership, as well as the professional staff and clergy, I felt like it was the right decision as well. And so it was one of the things that I really like about what paved my path towards working at Beth El was that those were two completely independent decisions. One was becoming a congregant again and moving back and becoming a member of the community at the synagogue, and the other was professionally. And so that those things happen at the same time has me feeling like it's a community, and it's hard. Yes, sometimes it's hard to balance at what point am I the congregant and what point am I the staff person. The truth is it's really, there's never a full separation. However, it's also what brings a lot of meaning to the work that we do, because those that work in synagogues know that the job is not 9 to 5. you don't get to punch in and punch out in any specific time. There are certain staff that do in leadership roles, that's not part of the position. And to have the sense of community and knowing that we care about it beyond the fact that it happens to be my profession is what brings fulfillment and the energy to continue to do it.
Well, it really does have that feel of things happen for a reason. And it was a great way for you to reconnect with your congregation and settle in with your family. But also, it's great to hear that there's a congregation that had that focus of fundraising. Now, fundraising is a given when it comes to having a congregation and building buildings and creating different funds, but not every congregation actually has a point person that does that. A lot of that relies on the rabbi, the executive director, some combination of committee and people. But to have a person on staff to do that really shows a lot of foresight and structure for the congregation.
I agree. I give them a lot of credit for doing that. There was a donor who helped seed the funding of the position that also thought it was important and then had the fortitude to invest in what the return would be. And I agree. And I give credit to them for thinking of it. I give credit for them to investing in it. And I give credit for them as we rolled out the role in a way that was different from, because we had previously had a foundation director, which was really to help get a separate foundation up and running, to create some separation between foundation and endowment assets from synagogue and operating expenses and revenues. And so I give them credit in being able to look and identify and say, not only we're going to bring somebody on to integrate our philanthropic approach here, we're also going to become more active and take the lead of whatever best practices are for fundraising too. And our organization has done that, from lay leadership to clergy to the role that I started. Like, those were all things that have to work together in order for it to be successful.
So from the start within that position to where you are now, how did you then move up into this more operational role in the managing director seat?
We had some administrative changes in, like 2018, where we had some long tenured staff that were starting to make career changes and going into next challenges of where they were going to be professionally. And that created a void within the organization. And for whatever reason, different things that I had been doing for the synagogue, in addition to fundraising, had given interest to some board members to say, maybe we should be talking to Matt about considering the role. I knew that meant a different level of commitment in terms of time. And so that was something for me to consider too. And at the same time, I felt an obligation to align where I thought my experiences and expertise could help the synagogue. And so we both got to a point where we wanted to talk more about it. And what we both also felt strong about, both meaning the lay leadership and myself, felt strongly about, was that there was still a vetting process for whomever we hired, even if that was me. And so our lay leadership still put me through the executive search firm that was going to be looking for the process to get their objective input on whether or not it was the right fit. Collectively, we still felt that it was, and in fall of 2019 is when I started in the role.
Well, it's great that it played out so well for you and obviously for the congregation. So it's been a little while since 2019. And but I sense it's always interesting to see the different day-to-day that an executive director has, because there's a lot of different aspects of community and operational focus that you have within this position. So how would you describe your day-to-day, and how often is your Monday the same as your Tuesday, is the same as your Wednesday?
Well, I'll start with your last question. No, it's often, every day is often a little bit different. And I think it takes a level of discipline to prioritize different tasks, knowing when deadlines are, to make sure that whatever those big frogs are the week, that you've got them on your radar, to make sure that even though Mondays and Tuesdays look different from week to week, that the big items that need to get addressed are still prioritized in a way that things continue to move forward. Can you remind me what your question was? I'll revisit it.
Basically, what is your day to day? What are the things that you focus on a regular basis to operate the synagogue?
Yeah, so at a really high level, what I want is an environment and a culture where our team thrives. We have people that understand the intricacies of a synagogue better than I ever will. We have people, I'm incredibly biased. We have the best clergy team around. Like we just do. We have such a great clergy team, from cantors to rabbis to rabbinic intern. And we have an amazing preschool and early childhood center. We have a great program staff. All these people, they know how to do these things and make sure that we're thriving and engaging our congregation in a meaningful way. That my job is to stay out of their way. My job is to create an environment where they feel like they can produce what it means to connect and engage with Beth El Synagogue, and whatever I can do to make that possible and stay out of their way and making it happen. That's what I see my job is. So I'm really an expert in most nothing, and I see my role as relationships, helping set priorities and maintaining a culture that people want to be part of.
And that's a great answer, because part of the key of synagogue leadership is being in the people business and making sure you're creating those relationships with people so that it does create community, and a community that thrives and people want to be participating on a regular basis. Now, with things in the world, things in different states pretty much opened up at this point with less of a concern about COVID, thankfully. How are you seeing attendance at your events, at your services, in comparison to what it looked like towards the end of 2019?
We've had great participation and attendance. I remember we were one of the first synagogues in the area to say that we were going to close and do so for an extended period of time, which we thought, some people thought was nuts. Like, you're going to close for 5 weeks. Now, keep in mind, this was Pesach, so we were keeping in mind building in time to get through Pesach too. And then most places here, we were a year and a half later when we were reunited with the building and welcoming people back. And so we were quick to make a shift and spin up into a cyber shul and offer engagement virtually. And we were quick as quickly as we could in terms of doing things within state guidance and protocols to reopen and do so in a staged process to be welcoming people back into the building. And so it was July of 20, I guess it would have been 2021, when we welcomed people back into the building for services. And that attendance and what we did in July of 2021 is very different than what we have today. However, it was staged. And so as we staged back in our B'nai Mitzvah program and a more regular curriculum, preschool and things of that nature, we're now back to having a few hundred people every single Saturday. More than that, if there's a B'nai Mitzvah, a very strong, well-attended congregational lunch after on Saturdays, and really building back some of the engagement programs within young families, teens, even adult education, in a way that we can tell that there's definitely a craving for community here, and we're happy and going to provide it as much as we absolutely can. And so that's been very positive.
Well, and that really is fantastic. Getting people to come back in a strong way is a challenge that a lot of synagogues are having. So to hear that you're having success, it really is a positive, and a positive things that you're doing, and really help with the future and the growth of communities like yours as time goes on, because it really was a challenge to membership, having a building that wasn't open, and people decided that getting acclimated to doing Zoom or live stream for different types of activity. Is there anything that you're still doing within live stream and Zoom that there's a need for congregants to still participate in?
Yeah, we do still have regular Zoom minions. We've returned to having in-person minions, and then we do more regular Zoom minions as well, which has actually increased our Zoom or our minion participation. We knew when we were going back in the building regularly that Zoom was here to stay, or some sort of virtual component was here to stay. And so there were upgrades that we made to mainly our sanctuary to add more quality audiovisual. And so those things have stayed as when we produce events, if there's a hybrid option or a virtual option, that quality is better there. our quality is better. I mean, I think many synagogues had live streaming services well before the pandemic. The quality of that has changed for many, and we're part of that group that invested in better equipment to make it a better experience for those that are logging on. And then in terms of inclusivity and accessibility, we take into consideration how do we use these tools that we were given, that we benefited from the pandemic, and make sure that we're making it as accessible as possible for people that, for a variety of reasons, aren't going to come to the building, whether it be age or health situation, or because they snowbird and they want to stay connected to their home shul. There's so many different ways that we've benefited from that. So let's learn from that. Let's capitalize from the things that we saw as benefits, and still keep them while we bring people back in the building and allow them to come back in a way that they were missing.
It's always great to have a feel for the congregants, the people of the congregation, and what their needs are. Now, with regard to them, we mentioned something before we started recording that really is something that stands out about your congregation, that prior to COVID, and not just before, but somewhat before, you switched models where you weren't focused on dues, but more of a philanthropic concept to being a member of the synagogue. So if you can you share a little bit about the thought and the implementation behind that, and how that goes year to year within the process of keeping your community?
For sure. So no question about it, we require financial support, just like a shul with dues. I think what I've learned from talking with other synagogues across the country is that the big difference is that, from our perspective, 100% of our financial support comes from program fees and from contributions, charitable gifts. And so we have no line of our budget that is accounted for with dues, because we don't have any. We approach it from a philanthropic standpoint. We ask people to support. We ask people to renew their support. We ask people to increase their support. There's no lack of opportunity for tzedakah to be given to the synagogue. And at the same time, when we engage with people around joining the synagogue or increasing their engagement with the synagogue, it is completely separate from the idea of what it means to support it financially. And so we will educate people when they ask questions about what are the financial needs of the synagogue. We'll educate them, and we'll ask for support and for them to consider us in their giving plans, because we know that they have other places that they want to support as well. And our first and continued dialogue will always be around engagement. Where can we find places in the synagogue that you find fulfilling and meaningful for you, your family, your loved ones? And let's connect you. Let's find ways for you to attend programs or learnings or services or wherever those things are. Bring your new ideas to the synagogue too, and get engaged and volunteer, whatever those things look like. Because our belief generally is, if you're not feeling like those things are connecting with you anyway, you're not going to feel so good about supporting the synagogue. And for those even that are less engaged, they've also found ways to give and even increase their support in ways of seeing what the engagement looks like, and feel like their support is adding to the engagement of other people and the importance of what synagogue life brings to them.
It really is fantastic, because it does give a bigger feel of vested interest into the community with this. But on the operational end, since this is part of your role, is in making sure that the shul lights are on and those bills are paid, how challenging is it? Like, do your numbers fluctuate year to year, or do you see the path just growing because of the path that you have already created, and the relationship driven giving that has been happening prior, when you launched this program, and seeing a growth that helps the synagogue thrive even more?
Yeah, so I'll say my bias towards this model and it working for us, I also understand that it's not the right model for everybody. And so there are a variety of circumstances that led us to feeling like we could do this successfully. And the initial change we saw in revenue was in the first few years, and it was dramatically more than what we were seeing with our dues model. Now we're kind of at a reliable place. We kind of have a sense for what we think annual giving will look like, just like any other nonprofit, secular or religious. And so we work through annual giving much like any other nonprofit would, and we work with donors and ask them to renew. We ask them to consider monthly donations. We ask them to consider increasing. It has to come with an understanding of what the need is, and that's what we work to communicate and articulate with the congregation to seek that commitment from them. And so from an operations standpoint, we can look and see, like any other nonprofit would, what did we receive from gifts? Kind of where were those donations coming from? Where do we think that they'll repeat? Where do we think we have some opportunity to increase? Where do we think that we may have some funding priorities shift for people that may have invested in things, and we know that they have different giving priorities that may change things from a giving standpoint as well. And then we work with that total pool to figure out what available resources are there to provide the programs and services that our congregation has said that they want and that they expect from us.
It really is fantastic how well this has been received and how smooth it is in the process of how you operate the synagogue. It's without funding from your congregants, it really is very hard to keep everything operational. But as you look at your calendar and the things that you are developing for them, how much are there people who give suggestions within their donations? Are there people who make asks for this type of programming I want to see in the synagogue, or is there different ways that people are able to share their thoughts on how they want to involve or improve the synagogue programming?
Sure. I mean, in a synagogue our size, there's no lack of opinions or suggestions that come from people that care about their synagogue community. And with that, I'm somebody who's a strong proponent and advocate for people that want to make directed gifts, for people that want to say, hey, this is something that I really care about, and I'd like to see my tzedakah go towards that. It's very rare where we have a situation where somebody's directed interest would be overfunded by their gift. And so to the extent of where we can say yes to somebody and say, yeah, like, please, like, give to that lunch that you really care about, or give to that project that you are very passionate about. We want to be able to do that and make sure that it's consistent with what our budget is, and consistent with because that budget has been approved by our board and demonstrates a reflection of what our values are. And so whenever we can, we want to be able to say yes to those requests when people say, I'd really like to fund fill in the blank. And every now and then when there's something that that the needs that are within the budget are different than what that person wants to fund, then we have a conversation, and it allows for an engagement opportunity with that congregant to say, you know what, like, I hear you, and that's great, and let's revisit that and keep that on the radar. Are you open to talking about a different area of need that is similar to the category that you're thinking of funding, and how do we align with what you're interested in giving with what we have planned for the next year?
It's very nice. It really is great to have that type of rapport. But obviously, and in such a large congregation, people's voices can feel drowned out. But obviously, in yours, there's really opportunities to make sure that they can reach out and they are heard, and their thoughts can be part of the implementations.
We aim for that. I certainly hope that people feel like there's someone that's willing to listen on the other side of their question or concern or comment, whether that's myself or any of our staff or clergy or lay leadership. I'm always hopeful that we're providing that listening ear to be able to be engaging and have the best possible dialogue around support, even if that's not financial, even if it's about how to get involved or how to improve things. We always want to be the best we can for our congregants.
It's very, very, it's wonderful that what you have developed there. Now, looking at your years as managing director, is there something that really stands out that you're most proud of, that whether some of your implementation or some of you nurtured that really is a great asset to the congregation, or even something very small that people may not even realize?
The proudest moments I have are when there are complimentary statements made from those that have engagements with our synagogue around our collective team. Whether it's after this last High Holy Days where unsolicited after unsolicited comment from people who attended High Holy Days saying like, gosh, like your clergy team seemed to really enjoy working together. Or coming to programs and having compliments from congregants who say, gosh, you know, your associate director, her name's Liz, your associate director, really, like, she's just terrific. And Pam, who's our welcome desk coordinator, who is our, you know, I like to call her our director of first impressions, who's the first smiling face when people walk in the building and they compliment that. That to me is the best reflection of who we are as a team, that demonstrates who we are, who we want to be, and the type of community that we are, very transparently to people that want to come and participate. And we have an active board who welcomes people to the synagogue, who sits in the bima, who gives announcements, who is very engaged in making sure that the synagogue is successful in executing on our strategic plan and all those things as well. And so all those things and our ability to execute on them have been the things that I'm most proud of. Not because I did all of them. I mean, I'm part of a team where many of us play a role in making sure that they happen. I get the benefit of hearing a lot of the feedback, and that feels like a nice reward.
It is great to be the I guess the person that people are most comfortable with, or are comfortable with having those conversations with. And I'm sure you get the different types of feedback as well, in the negative or the challenges. So hearing some of the positives at that level really does balance things out and make things even more rewarding.
Absolutely. I mean, we do like many shuls, we do a regular newsletter. Ours is about every 3 or 4 months. And my most recent one, I'm forgetting the title of it. Essentially, I talked about the number one complaint that I get. And I said the number one complaint that I get is the temperature in the building. And I allude to the fact that it might be the same day where it's either too warm for someone, too cold for someone else. And it's not so much the fact that people have opinions, they're entitled to those opinions. And I hope that all of us are willing to listen and understand why somebody's frustrated with somebody in a time where they've got negative feedback. Is how do we respond to it? How do we respond to it? How do we listen to it? And even if somebody is borderline rude, how do we still hear what they're saying so that we're not dismissing it? Because they might still have a really valid point, even if they're not approaching it in a way that you'd like them to.
Yeah, it's in the climate that your synagogue is in. I'm sure you definitely have issues with temperature, that and I guess with your entrance of people bringing snow in as they come in based on the day, that really can be, it's definitely hard to please everyone with temperature. I know people come to me all the time about it's too hot, it's too cold. I know how I feel when I walk into the sanctuary after being outside walking on a hot day. So it's that everyone has their own individual need, and I can see why that's one of the hardest challenges that you do have. What would you say is, if you were talking to a general audience and you really wanted to tell them about how wonderful your shul is, how would you summarize that for them?
I summarize it. I had somebody ask me recently who's new to the community, who had engaged with a different synagogue, and they wanted to know what our view on a specific topic was. Nothing political, just kind of lifestyle, interfaith, like those type of questions.
Sure.
And I guess I'll answer your question with how I kind of responded to this person who is interested in maybe changing synagogues. And what I sent to them was, keep your synagogue membership. Like, keep your synagogue membership where you're at, because it's still early and you may end up finding value in that. And they were expressing concern around their financial ability to support both synagogues. I said, I understand that. That's valid. I said, so keep your synagogue membership at the synagogue you're at now, and come spend some time at Beth El when you feel like there's something that speaks to you. And wait on the support piece until you decide if we're a good fit. And if we feel like the right fit, if we feel like we're engaging in a way that's meaningful to you, and that we're providing synagogue life in a way that is valuable, and decide if you want to support us financially at a future time. Like right now, just come and see if we are what you're hoping that this other synagogue was going to be for you. And I think that represents who we are, and is consistent with Jewish values of like letting people explore and like giving them a chance. Like we're not going to be territorial over people who want to be elsewhere. And I think that that's representative of who we are as a congregation. We want to strive to be warm and welcoming and a place that anyone who wants to engage in Jewish life can be. And if we can do so transparently and offer that to people, we think that there's a lot here that people will enjoy. And we understand, look, there's a reason why there's chocolate and vanilla. So there's a reason why there are multiple flavors. And it's okay. We have a really vibrant synagogue community here. There are good options for people that are looking to connect with synagogues in a variety of ways. I know people at all the synagogues. I've been members at multiple of the synagogues, and I think that they all provide value. And so giving people the space to explore with us openly while removing the financial barrier to begin with has really, I think, opened that transparent dialogue around like, come and see if this is the right community for you. If it is, then dive in deep, because we're going to give you the opportunity to do so.
Well, I appreciate hearing an answer like that. I think that's wonderful. I think that really is warm and welcoming to for people to make decisions on what their needs are and enjoy the things that your congregation is providing. So, Matt, I just want to thank you. This really was a great conversation. I really love learning a lot more about your non-dues model that you have, and really how your synagogue has thrived in making that switch, and really about all the fantastic things that are happening now and hopefully into the future as well. So thank you for joining us for this conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Howard.
And thank you all for joining us as well. There really are some amazing thoughts, process that executive directors and leadership of synagogues have to help make the synagogue run. A lot of conversation around the same time that Matt and his congregation made these changes into their due structure had been going on throughout the synagogue communities and continues to this day. And it's great to see the success of a congregation that made that switch, because it's important for congregations to figure out what is the best way to operate and keep going forward, because challenges can happen if you don't have dues coming in and don't have an answer to how to replace them. So I think there's a lot to learn from our conversation today. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But go out, have a great rest of today, and we will see you next time.